Hello, my name is Jessica Meservy. I teach 6th grade in Lincoln, Maine, and I'm going to be reading chapter 15 of Pax to you today. But before I read, something I do with my class is I go over some of the vocab. So some of the vocab that's going to come up in chapter 15 that might be tricky is flanked, which is being on one side of someone, traction, a grip against something, commotion, a state of being confused, and encampment, it's like a camping area. So now I'm going to start reading chapter 15. The sun burned through a dawn fog. The two foxes had been traveling for hours, but Gray was slow and rested often, so they had only just reached the valley basin. For the most part, Pax respectfully flanked the older fox, but sometimes he broke away to race at full speed for long, glorious minutes before circling back. He had never run before. Not really. He sprinted around the borders of his pen or across the yard, but this running was a different thing. Neat oval paws, healed now, skimming the ground only for traction as he galloped faster and faster over great sweeps of grass. Yesterday's meal had cleared his senses and fueled his muscles, but now the eggs were gone from his belly, and the smells of the warming valley brought on a powerful hunger. Where the humans were, where there would be food. How far? 2 days' travel. Gray described a place of old stone walls where the earth smelled faintly of tar and hemp, bordered by a river. We will reach it by dusk. The human settlements are another day's travel beyond that. Pax did not remember human settlements. He did not remember a river. Of his home he remembered the looming door. He remembered oaks ringing the house, the overgrown remains of a flower garden he was never allowed into, the sounds of a road. He sensed that other humans lived along this road, but he had never encountered them. These memories were fading, as was the memory of being caged. He could no longer recall what the sky looked like through hexagons of cage wire. He remembered his boy, though, the hazel eyes with their odd round pupils, the way Pax would close them, and the way Peter would close them and throw his head back and yelp something near a bark when he was delighted. His salty neck that smelled sometimes of sweet and sometimes of soap. His hands always moving with their scent of chocolate, which Pax loved, and of mint leather, which he loathed. As the two foxes traveled on, Pax reflected on the puzzle of the other sense of his boy, his underlying scent. It hung between grief and yearning, and it welled from a deep ache for something that Pax could never divine. Sometimes the boy's nest room, this grief-yearning scent was so strong that it overpowered everything else, and yet his boy made no move to acquire whatever it was he wanted so badly. Whenever caught that scent, he would hurry from wherever he was to find Peter, flung across his bed, clutching the objects he kept hidden in the bottom drawer of his bureau, his face set hard in ridges. Pax would nose Peter's shirt sleeve, or claw up the curtains, then pretend to lose his footing and fall to the floor. Anything to get his boy to play. But when the grief-yearning scent was strongest, none of his tricks would work. On those days, Peter would shoo Pax outside and shut the door. Remembering this, Pax felt the urge to run again, but not for the joy of it. This war that's coming, are you sure it will harm all in its path? Even the youth? Everything. It will destroy everything. Pax knows Gray respectful, but urgent. They must hurry. The older fox studied the younger one for a moment, then began to trot. They crossed the marshy seam of the valley and climbed the rocky cliffs, shoulder to shoulder this time. At the top of the rise, the two foxes stopped. Gray was panting hard. Ahead, the pines towered up, promising long, cool pools of shade. But the markings here were strong. The challenger hunted this territory, and the threat in his scent was unmistakable. And almost immediately, the ground beat with a light staccato of paws tearing toward them. Pax and Gray had barely braced themselves when the tawny fox burst from the underbrush, lips curled in a snarl, tail lashing. Peter shrank back, but Gray advanced calmly, his body lowered enough to declare non-aggression. "We are only passing through." The challenger ignored the peaceful greeting and sprang, hitting the old fox hard in the flank and pinning him down, then sank his teeth into Gray's thin neck. At Gray's pain scream, Pax's guard hairs lifted and his heartbeat quickened. His muscles thrummed with the fury he'd known only once. In the early days, with his humans, the father had raised a hand to the boy, and Pax had shot across the room without a thought, small kit teeth tearing fiercely into the man's pant leg. Now, as it had then, his back arched and a low growl rumbled deep in his throat. The challenger spun around in surprise, and Pax challenged him headlong. They rolled, teeth clipping at tender ears, hind claws digging for purchase in soft belly fur. The yellow fox was more skilled, but Pax's fighting was fueled by an instinct to protect. With his teeth found in the other's throat, the challenger scrambled to his feet and backed off, whimpering. Pax leapt in front of Gray, shielding him, as he'd shielded his boy that long time ago, lifted his chest, and growled a warning. The challenger slunk away. Pax shook off the blood from a dozen superficial scratches, then cleaned Gray's wound. The puncture was deep. He urged Gray to go back. "No, I will travel." The two padded steadily for an hour through light woods, Pax restraining himself to keep pace with the ailing Gray, relieved at least that they kept moving. But when a murder of crows landed in the bare arms of a pecan tree, Gray doubled back and sat down on its base, ears pricked up intently at the commotion. Pax waited, not patiently. After a moment, the old fox barked for him. "The war is moving closer." "How do you know this?" "The crows. Listen." Pax cocked his head. More shrieking birds swept in, descending into the lower branches, then flapping up again to higher perches in a cyclone of distress. "They're upset." The crows hulked their shoulders, spiked their feathers, jerked and dipped their shrieking beaks. Their discord set Pax's nerve on edge. "There's disorder." He attended more carefully. What he sensed alarmed him. He tried to describe it. Air choked with death, fire and smoke, blood in a river, the river running red with it, the earth drowning in blood. Chaos. Everything is broken. The fibers of the trees, the clouds, even the air is broken. Yes, war. Where? Pax attuned himself once more. West, still distant, but nearing, and now a small group of warsick has come from the south to meet it. From the south? Pax paced while Gray struggled to his feet. He offered again to travel alone, and again Gray refused to turn back home. Again they set out, and again their pace was slower than Pax wanted. They stopped only for meals of grubs and berries, and whenever they did, Pax searched the air for any trace of his boy's scent, for the faintest sound of his voice. None. None.